Thank you. Thank you, Lucy. Ladies and gentlemen, good morning to you all and welcome. My name is Tom Green, and as chairman of Leafmark, it's my great pleasure to welcome you all to the launch of the 2022 Leaf Global Impacts Report. It's very good to have so many of you joining us for this event, representing the rich and diverse tapestry of our stakeholder groups, all relationships which we value enormously. Sadly, Caroline Drummond, our CEO, is unable to attend and has sent her apologies, but I know how excited she is by the achievements and developments of Leaf over the past year, some of which we celebrate today, and of all our ambitious plans for the future. Before we start, a few housekeeping points. Towards the end of today's session, there will be an opportunity for you to ask questions of the panel. Please do share these questions in the chat function at any stage during the meeting. To do this, hover your cursor towards the bottom of your screen and a bar should appear featuring the chat button. As you've just heard, we will be recording this session so that it will be available to view after the event. And we'll make sure we finish as planned by 12 midday latest. After me, you'll be hearing from Vicky Robinson, who's recently joined us from Natural England, and then from Lucy Redmore, our Leafmark Assurance Manager, who will draw out highlights from the 22 Global Impacts Report, and finally from Claire Marque, our Business Development Director. A great team demonstrates very well the theory proposed, I think, by Aristotle, who said that the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. And I'm constantly reminded of this as I spend time with the Leaf team and with Leafmark farmers and growers at various different events. We're united by our common purpose to encourage and recognize more sustainable farming, and also by a willingness to collaborate, to share best practices, and to seek and celebrate continuous improvement. These are the characteristics which I recognize in Leaf, and which are demonstrated so well by Vicky, Lucy, and Claire. I take this opportunity to thank them and the entire Leaf team now. This is our 10th Global Impacts Report, and it comes in the year when the Leaf charity, linking environment and farming, is celebrating its 30th anniversary. 30 years during which Leaf has been a consistent voice promoting more sustainable farming and recognizing the positive role that agriculture has to play in protecting life on our planet, encouraging biodiversity, and helping to deliver safe, reliable food. Leafmark is proud to work with wonderful farmers in many countries around the world, and with retailers and brands with whom we share in the task of informing and assuring consumers of the provenance of their food choices. Looking back at the past year, it's enormously encouraging that so much attention is now being focused on climate change. We've seen the COP26 and numerous new initiatives to promote net zero and regenerative agriculture in many forms. ESG, environment, social, and governance considerations are now prerequisites for investors and are standing agenda items at all corporate board meetings. Now, this rhetoric is positive. However, the challenge, as always, is in delivery. That is where Leafmark farmers have much to be proud of. The Global Impacts Report documents actions taken by Leafmark farmers and seeks to answer the question, so what? What is the impact of your farm, or of the practices you adopt on your farm? And how can we plan for and demonstrate year-on-year performance improvement against each of our chosen KPIs? This is not just a box-ticking exercise. Leafmark recognizes ways of working and seeks to accelerate both development and adoption of best practices. Importantly, we take a whole farm approach with integrated farm management. And whilst some of the technologies are new, often the solutions which farmers are adopting are rooted in traditional best practice, but enhanced today by the use of digital precision systems which have perhaps not been available in the past. The Global Impacts Report describes what farmers are doing to encourage more sustainable farming and management of the environment. But also, by highlighting impact, it increasingly speaks of why those actions are taken, how farm practices are mitigating climate change, new practices adopted to achieve increased carbon capture and storage, for instance, to increase biodiversity and to reduce emissions. This annual exercise in reporting is an important part of our framework to ensure continuous improvement. We're reporting this on behalf of all Leafmark farmers and growers. However, this report is a summary of the huge endeavours which are recorded individually by every participating farmer each year in their Leaf Sustainable Farm Reviews. We are enormously proud to have been working with some farmers throughout all of the 30 years of Leaf, and since Leafmark was launched in 2003. Next year will be our 20th birthday. And likewise with our long-standing relationships with partners such as Waitrose, M&S, Jordan's and others. These are the partners with whom, together with Leafmark farmers, we are constantly challenging ourselves to raise the bar, both in terms of more sustainable farming and the way this is recognised in the Leafmark standard, as well as in providing critical insight and assurance to consumers. We are also delighted to welcome new Leafmark farmers and supply chain partners, including during the past year, Tesco, Lidl and PepsiCo. All are most welcome and add strength to our proposition enormously. We're living in an uncertain and volatile world. The horrendous war in Ukraine is disrupting food supplies and massively destabilizing markets. And these factors further exacerbate the global supply chain issues which have arisen during COVID. Climate change, however, threatens infinitely more serious and longer-term impact on society and our planet. The pursuit of more sustainable farming system is one essential piece of humanity's response to climate change. On the negative side, much of traditional farming and food supply is threatened by increasingly extreme weather events, heat waves and droughts, storms and floods. Additionally, agriculture is responsible for greenhouse gas emissions, which are causing climate change today. However, on the positive side, agriculture has a critical role to play in climate change mitigation. Where ag is a cause of climate change today, it can become a major part of the solution in the future. The crops, hedgerows and trees found on our farmland all sequester carbon from the atmosphere through photosynthesis. And well-managed soils provide carbon storage. Farmers manage the entire biosphere on their farms, and increasingly they have the tools available for monitoring and hence smart, planet-positive management for increased biodiversity. These are just some of the elements which feature in this year's Global Impacts Report, which I see has appeared in the chat as I've been speaking to you, and which I wholeheartedly commend to you. I'm delighted now to hand over to Vicky Robinson, who I mentioned at the beginning has recently joined us as our new technical director. She will introduce further the Impacts Report and help to set some of its messages in the context of our 10-year Leaf strategy. Thank you all, and thank you, Vicky.
Brilliant. Thank you, Tom. And absolutely delighted to be here today for my first Global Impacts Report launch. And I want to give a bit of background and context to the report and also explain a bit about how it fits into Leaf's strategy. Firstly, to build and repeat on some of Tom's speech, just about numbers. So Leaf celebrated its 30th year anniversary last year and launched its new 10-year strategy. And this is the 10th Global Impacts Report, 2012 being the year Leaf created its monitoring evaluation programme. So lots of numbers, lots of data. And the Global Impacts Report is built on data. And to quote Peter Drucker, if you can't measure it, you can't improve it. The insight gained from the Global Impact Report and the impact of Leafmark is crucial for the continuous improvement of the standard and provides the foundation for the transparent and impartial evaluation of Leaf's effectiveness in delivering our mission and vision, which is for a global farming and food system that delivers climate positive action, builds resilience and supports the health, diversity and enrichment of our food, farms, the environment and society. It also supports Leafmark in its objective of building market recognition, as the data provides the opportunity to quantify the positive impact of certified farmers, to share this with the industry. And the value of this is a topic that Claire is going to touch on in more detail later on. The Leaf Monitoring and Evaluation Framework is designed to comply with the ICL Impacts Code of Good Practice and reflects our commitment to rigorous, systematic and transparent methods of reporting on the impact of Leafmark certification, which is so important to all of us involved in Leafmark. And this is also in line with our ethos of continuous improvement. We are always seeking to develop a better understanding of our impacts and integrate these into our strategy, decision-making and planning. With the reporting structured around the whole farm principles of integrated farm management, it enables continuous improvement to be monitored. Consistent monitoring and indicators over the past 10 years have enabled us to measure the collective improvement of certified businesses. We've been able to demonstrate that in this year's report, which includes graphs to show trends. We've also adapted our indicators over time to address issues of significance and in alignment with Leaf strategies, such as focusing on regenerative outcomes and climate mitigation. With one of the 8 commitments in our 10-year strategy specifically referring to measuring impact and harmonising metrics, the data to inform this is not just crucial to this commitment, but to all areas of the strategy, which builds on our 30-year legacy and identifies areas we want to strengthen to support the goals set by the UK government and globally by the UN to ensure that farmers and farming and growers are front and central to the solution. I'm now going to hand over to Lucy Redmore, our insurance manager, who is going to share some of the highlights of this year's report. So thank you very much, Lucy, and over to you.
Thank you very much, Vicky. So it's an absolute privilege to be here today and to see the culmination of a huge amount of work and data analysis to produce this report. And there is a huge challenge in translating data into impacts and quantifying what that can mean on farm at a farm level and collectively. And the way that we've done that is to focus on intended impacts. So in terms of the approach that Leafmark has taken, we have got into the detail of what's a metric, what's an indicator, what's an impact, to ensure that we have a strategy where we can quantify impact at a farm level. We defined 11 intended impacts, which we have identified can be delivered through implementing Leafmark certification. So these intended impacts include factors such as resilient and diverse businesses, improved management of water use and water quality, and other aspects such as improved energy use and efficiency. You'll note that the intended impacts align with the principles of integrated farm management. And then for each of those intended impacts, we looked through the data that we had available and we identified indicators that we could use to monitor progress against those. And these are the indicators that are included in the report. The indicators are, as Vicky mentioned, they've changed over time, and what's been fantastic is because these have existed over the entire period in which Leaf has existed, we can monitor that progress through time, which is a really impactful report to show not only the impact on snapshot year approach, but how that has progressed over time. The report is available for you to take a look at, and I would encourage you to go through the detail of those statistics and to look at the trends that we pulled out. But today, I want to just highlight some of the key stats that we were particularly impressed by and particularly want to share with you today. And that can be categorised into the several categories of impacts at scale, impacts on farm, and also impacts on society. Not forgetting that whilst Leafmark is an environmental focus standard, we also do interact with society engagement, and that's a key part of integrated farm management. So firstly, some statistics on impact at scale. Leafmark is operating at a significant scale, and what's been fantastic is we've observed continued growth over the past few years, particularly. For hectarage of land, for example, there's been an increase in not only the total areage of certified Leafmark businesses in terms of hectarage, but also in terms of fruit and vegetables, flowers and ornamentals. We have observed, and it's not right to shy away from slight decreases, we have had a decrease in some combinable crops, but actually given the challenging year that we've had, it's a maintenance is also seen as a success. And actually those encouraging businesses that are still with us is also successful. But we do anticipate growth over the next few years, particularly in all sectors. And you can see that by the crops grown on Leafmark certified land globally. It is a wide range. It's not just fruit and vegetables, it's also arable systems, and it's also livestock systems. So it's fantastic to see that Leafmark's whole farm approach is having an impact at a wider scale, of where even if there's market demand for perhaps one product enterprise in a business, there's the impact of Leafmark for all of those business enterprises due to the Leafmark's whole farm approach. Another thing to note here as well is market recognition, and this is something Claire will touch on more detail later, but for some of these crops in particular, they represent a large proportion of the total UK market and farmed area. If I take the example of celery and lettuce, 95% of the UK farmed area of celery is Leafmark certified, equally for 91% for lettuce. So it's not only thinking about the farmed area in terms of total, but also the proportion that makes up of the UK market. If I continue with a global scale, this map here indicates the countries in which there are Leafmark certified business, and you can see we do have a global reach. And this is something that we anticipate, particularly over the next few years, will carry on growing. And I'm really excited to see in 3 years' time, potentially, how many different colours we will have on this map to represent the growth that's upcoming for Leafmark globally. We've also seen a growth in international market recognition. So it's not only thinking about the Leafmark UK market, but the international market too. And as an example, the French certification system called HVE has recognised Leafmark as equivalent for their level 2 standard for European growers. And this is the sort of recognition that we're getting in the global market that will help the continued growth of Leafmark overseas. The final topic for impact at scale is having a bit more of a UK perspective. I wanted to reflect on the growth that Leafmark has taken over the past 10 years. If you look back in 2012, we were around 20% of the UK farmed area being Leafmark certified, and we're now up to a staggering 48%. And that's in the course of 10 years. That's a really significant growth. And what's also exciting is we don't see this flattening off. If anything, this growth curve is going to increase at a really significant rate over the next couple of years. So again, it's these sort of trends that we have from this amount of data and from the UK market that's really significant. And I think these sort of statistics speak for themselves in the impact that farms are having and the impact at scale that Leafmark is delivering. Moving on then to focus more on impacts at a farm level. I won't go through all of the intended impacts. That's in the report, and please do have a look. But some of the key ones I wanted to draw out were, firstly, improved energy use and efficiency. You can see here on the screen the growth in the number of businesses that are using a carbon footprinting tool and those that have one or more types of renewable energy generation on farm. For both of these, the statistic in itself in just 2021 is really remarkable in terms of particularly 75% of businesses having renewable energy generation. So that's, again, a really important impact that a farm is having on an individual level, but collectively has a much more significant impact too. But also, if you reflect then on the growth over the past 5 years, the reason this starts in 2016 is this is one of the questions we introduced. As Vicky mentioned, we're constantly thinking, what more data do we need to incorporate into our data set to enable impactful reporting? And these two are examples of that. But you can see there has been a growth in both of these factors over the past 5 years, particularly in renewable energy generation. And this is also an example of, yes, whilst we can report on the impact in terms of an environmental perspective, this will also be impacting those individual farm businesses in terms of not only their environmental impact, but also economics, particularly in terms of renewable energy generation. That has subsequent knock-on impacts that the data can't capture, but it's there, and we're looking more in the future of how we can capture all of those benefits of Leafmark certification that's not just indicated by their practices and the uptake of certain activities. It also indicates how the Leafmark standard grows over time and how we use this information. For example, version 16 of the Leafmark standard is currently in development. It will be published on the 1st of October this year and come into effect on the 1st of April 2023. And based on this sort of data, based on the expertise of our technical advisory committee and feedback from our members, we have strengthened the requirements that we have on energy use, in particular in regards to carbon. And things like carbon footprinting, we have the support and evidence to demonstrate that our certified businesses are working at a really high benchmark, and we can push that higher, we can push that impact further, and then it's also the continued growth and impact of our certified businesses. The next example to go into detail on is water management, so improved management of water use and water quality. One particular statistic here that is really outstanding is that the number of certified businesses that are working with others in the catchment to improve water quality and water management. Leafmark certification is a whole farm system. It's not a whole area system, and there's not a whole landscape system. And our certified businesses are going above and beyond. So then looking beyond certification at a farm gate level and thinking about how they can engage with others to have a stronger collective impact, which is necessary for addressing issues such as this, in particular where water management needs that collaborative approach. So 51% is a really remarkable engagement level. And again, it's an example of how we can use this sort of data to inform the development of the Leafmark standard. As another example, in version 16, we'll be introducing new control points on collaboration and collective impact. And it's another attribute, therefore, that I would anticipate this statistic to increase further as it's being strengthened by the corresponding requirements in the Leafmark standard. The next topic to address is regenerative practices. This is something that's been a really big topic in the industry, quite rightly, and it's also led to a lot of terminology and a lot of different phrases that are used to talk around similar issues. In regards to integrated farm management, the outcomes of regenerative practices align with the outcomes of integrated farm management. And what we've started to do is try and map those and identify what data and indicators are aligned to this approach. So you can see on the screen here, we've got a number of statistics that are representative of regenerative practices that are really important to recognise in this context. This is an example again of a new metric. So this was introduced last year. So we're constantly trying to find where and how can we report most effectively on the impact of our certified businesses. Then the last topic in regards to impact on farm level is focusing on enriched diversity of native habitats and species. The key statistic here that I wanted to highlight is the 15% average habitat area on Leafmark certified farms. Again, this is an incredible statistic and shows how farmers are actually going above and beyond the requirements of the Leafmark standard. So for example, in version 15 of the standard, which is the current standard, there's a recommended requirement that a business has 5% habitat area. The fact that businesses have got 15% average habitat area overall shows just how effective and how driven these businesses are to find that land and create that habitat area. And again, an example of how monitoring and evaluation can inform the development of the Leafmark standard. And in version 16, that's been increased to 10% because we recognise the good work that our farmers are doing, and we want to give credit to that and recognition of that positive impact that farm is having. It's also, again, another context of collective impact of certified businesses. If you think the average habitat area is 15%, if if you take those in the context of scale that I spoke about earlier and the number of certified businesses, that's a really significant amount of habitat area that's on farm. And the impacts go beyond just that habitat area. It's about the wider industry, the wider issues we're facing in terms of sustainability and biodiversity in particular, and all the subsequent benefits that that has by encouraging that. In addition, we also have some really lovely statistics on scale and the types of habitat area that businesses have on farm, including things like hedges, infield trees and ponds. And what's fantastic is if you take this in the context of the Leafmark standard, this isn't just a habitat quantity. The Leafmark standard requires that these habitats are being managed effectively and appropriately and enhanced. So we're linking both habitat quantity and quality in our reporting with the confidence and assurance that Leafmark certification provides. Finally is impact on society. As I mentioned, whilst Leafmark is an environmental standard, we do factor in the society engagement too. It's a key part of integrated farm management and therefore a fundamental part of Leafmark. An incredible 87% of businesses hosted a farm visit last year. And this is particularly impressive given that COVID had many travel restrictions, and it was a really challenging time in terms of getting on farm and arranging those visits. So the fact that 87% did that is truly credit to the engagement investment of Leafmark certified businesses. It would be, you know, for full transparency, there was a slight reduction in on-farm visits, but actually I don't see that as a negative thing because it corresponded with businesses looking at different ways of engaging with farms. They adapted to a challenge of on-farm visits and the challenge of hosting visits by thinking about virtual engagement, by thinking about what are the other methods that I can engage with society in times where travel restrictions are in place, social distancing is in place, and a really difficult context. So the data shows so much more in terms of responding to context, responding to challenge, and indicated a resilience and adaptability to respond to those contextual factors. And it's really incredible the number that were visited. I'd also like to note here that a significant number of Leafmark certified businesses also participate in Leaf Open Farm Sunday events, and it's a really important part of their community engagement. I need to really strongly encourage you to have a look at Leaf Open Farm Sunday reporting. They've got a large number of impact reporting there that shows again what the impact of these visits are and engagement with society at a higher level of detail than is included in the global impact report. So I would encourage you to have a look at Leaf Open Farm Sunday reporting, as well as the other Leaf education reporting that's available. And again, it shows the impact that a farm is having on various scales. So that summarises the main impacts that I wanted to run through. Again, I'd like to thank everyone that participated in as a Leafmark certified business for your time in inputting this and your support. Again, the whole Leaf team for the collaborative effort of producing these reporting. And I'll now hand over to Claire, who will go into more detail of how this is important in regards to a business development perspective.
Thank you so much, Lucy. And I'm just going to share my slides with you all. Great to see so many of you here today. Thank you so much for joining us for this incredibly exciting launch of Global Impact Report 2022. And as this year's report outlines, the climate change and ecosystem emergency is undoubtedly one of the biggest challenges of our time. Our government has committed to reducing greenhouse gas emissions by at least 80% by 2050, among other commitments by retailers, brands, other industry leaders. Globally, farmers are increasingly adopting more sustainable and regenerative practices to play their part and build resilience into their own businesses. However, this is not going to be enough to tackle these sizable challenges on its own and to reach these really ambitious targets that have been set. And there must be, for that reason, full supply chain buy-in and support. Collaboration and working together is no longer an ideal. It's now a necessity. Retailers, brands, suppliers, finance, service providers, public sector bodies, just to name a few, are all considering their role in affecting the change needed to halt climate change and biodiversity loss, among other things. Their role is to lead by example, support their supply chains, and build resilience into the systems that they rely on. So, to ask the same question that Tom asked earlier, so what? What is the role of Leafmark within this framing to help deliver and demonstrate the change that's required? As Lucy brought up a little while ago, and I'm showing again right now, through the Leafmark system of assurance, we can demonstrate the impact that farmers and growers are already driving. We have the platform to share this data with a full range of stakeholders, retailers, brands again, policymakers, consumers. We can help support continued development to build impact even further through encouraging practices such as monitoring and measuring, and as Vicky mentioned, that management again, engaging with supply chains on behalf of farmers and growers, and using our reporting to help with planning and priority setting, and to shine a light on those areas where farmers and growers are excelling, and also those areas where they might need some more support, some time or energy or resources that can be focused more effectively. All of the above come together to drive the positive outcomes listed in this slide that you can see here on the right-hand side, such as building resilience, collectively delivering regenerative outcomes, adopting climate positive approaches, adopting nature-based solutions wherever possible, integrating sustainable farm management with those climate change and ecosystem targets, introducing circular systems, and a great many more. And these positive outcomes can be shared with a wide range of stakeholders appropriately through publications, events like this, social media, podcasts, Leaf Open Farm Sunday, Farmer Time, conversations, and more. It is based on these hugely positive outcomes that we can build partnerships, programs, and projects to promote an even greater uptake of sustainable farming practice and sustainable product choices. We at Leaf are privileged to work side by side with Jordan's, Waitrose, M&S, PepsiCo, Tesco, Lidl, Mindful Chef, Vitacress, and a great many more very highly valued industry actors to understand the challenges and define the direction, and to accelerate the change wherever possible. And whilst it's important to recognise that farms cannot solve these big issues alone, and we need our domestic supply chains to work together with the rest of the sector to support that change, we mustn't forget the role of global supply chains with even more complexity of differing standards, languages, cultures. Leafmark has been operating globally since its inception, and as today's report shares, there are Leafmark certified businesses in 19 countries worldwide, as this picture illustrates. The Leafmark standard has been designed to be globally applicable, supported in no small part by its business-specific, plan-based approach. We encourage farmers and growers in each and every country to consider soil, water, and other resources that they're working with, the habitat and the biodiversity that they can be protecting and enhancing, and the community engagement that they can be promoting. Leafmark is becoming increasingly recognised as a global assurance system for markets outside of the UK, as Lucy illustrated earlier. Also, they can benefit from the robust, credible and independent standards that it sets, and we are supporting this growth with ambitious plans to expand our support for farmers and growers worldwide, whether that be through translations of our tools and resources, live webinars in multiple languages, case studies reflecting regenerative farming across the world, or in-country advocates and advisors. So, to summarise, Leafmark has a critical role to play in providing both recognition for farmers already achieving great regenerative climate positive outcomes on their farm, and also to support all farmers, no matter where they are, and what stage they're at in their journey. So thank you. And now I'm going to hand over to Abby Holman from our assurance team to field questions to the panel. Please do carry on posting your questions in the chat function, and we'll get to as many as we can before we have to close today. Thank you.
Thank you, Claire. All right, so we're going to start with our questions. The first question is for all of the panel. It is great to see the report and impacts of Leafmark. What is your view on how impacts will evolve over the next 5 years?
I maybe start this one off. It's going to be definitely an evolving industry, and I think it's again going back to that point of how we report on things most effectively. I think it will continue to be more trend-based, so looking at over time, and also I think potentially over group, so going in onto a higher level of, is there a trend in a particular group of how they're enhancing in energy efficiency, so in the dairy sector, in fruit and vegetable sector. So I think that will be an element that we're looking into, is how can we categorize the information that we have to give more informative reporting. So I think that's probably the immediate term, and something that's short term. Moving forward on a longer term, it's being really ambitious about how we can interpret this data and how we can quantify impact on farm. What other sources of information can we use to do that? Can it be a combination of different information? So I think it's taking a really forward-facing approach to what information out there, how can that be used in a way that's valuable? And yeah, who knows what technology will bring and that will facilitate us to do.
Thanks, Lucy. Another question.
Can I just answer into that as well, Abby? Thank you. I think also the recognition that we are going to have more and more supply chains that will want to align with and choose Leafmark as their preferred option to deliver that assurance on farm for their supply chains. And I do think there will be a greater degree of collaboration globally as well. So we can expect this impact at a global level to just keep on growing and getting more and more positive.
Thanks, Claire. We have a specific question about one of our impact statistics. I'll direct this to Lucy. Do the total hectarage of land under the Leafmark certified areas include grassland crops for cattle and sheep?
Thank you. Yes, so the total hectarage is based on the total farm area that a business inputs when they're entering their data. So yes, that captures any grassland and any other the land that is under farm management.
Thank you. And on the topic of Leafmark expansion, what impacts will the additional suppliers you're working with have on the percentage of UK fruit and vegetables that are Leafmark certified?
Claire, I think if you've done estimates on this, you'll be able to give a very...
Yeah, so we're anticipating within the next 5 years that 85% of fruit and vegetables sold in the UK will be Leafmark certified. And let's just frame that won't just be at your grocery retail level. That should be, and we're really ambitious to really drive into those areas such as food service as well, public sector buying of produce too. So yeah, in the space particularly of horticulture, we're anticipating around 85%. In other areas in terms of dairy, we're looking at 30%. And in combinable crops, we're also looking more ambitiously at 40–50% as well. So we've got some really ambitious targets, yeah, we're really, really fortunate to be working with a great many brands that can help us deliver that collectively.
Thanks, Claire. Another question for the panel about Leafmark expansion. What level of understanding is there outside of the UK around the importance of promoting the values that Leafmark represents? And do you think the Leafmark logo will be found on packaging outside of the UK in the future?
Do you want me to take that one too? Yeah, brilliant. Okay, thank you. That's a really great question. In terms of recognition of the Leafmark logo, and using it to promote globally, yes, that is a major ambition, particularly of mine, a passion of mine, will be to be working with international supply chains and farmers and growers, so that they're not only providing Leafmark certified produce and with the Leafmark logo for the UK market, but also for their domestic market and other markets too. So that's something that we're really going to be focusing on over the next couple of years. I think the other thing as well to understand, I think, and one of our approaches is that having the Leafmark logo across all produce or food, etc., would be amazing. However, actually, looking at consumer behaviour, what tends to happen now, because we have a shorter attention span in stores and we don't really read labelling a great deal, we don't have that much, we don't give it that much attention. Actually, what consumers prefer to do is align with their retailer of choice or brand of choice and expect them to be making the right decision for them in terms of their values. And their values are, as we all can recognise over the last couple of years, more and more consumers are wanting their produce to and food choices to be more sustainably produced. So actually what we can do as well is work with those supply chains. So where the Leafmark logo may not be able to be used, there's still the right choices are being made on behalf of consumers and customers.
Thanks, Claire. I think a nice follow-on question to that for the panel is, what are the challenges to the expansion of Leafmark in a wider range of countries?
I could possibly take this to begin with as well, Lucy, if you want, and then you can fill in. So the great news is we know the answer to this, because we were very fortunate to receive some UKRI funding to look into this specific question, what the barriers might be to Leafmark certification overseas, etc. Some of the barriers, what the great news was actually that no matter what country we looked at, and we looked at a lot, it seemed to be a similar, the barriers seem to be quite similar, and also the enablers seem to be quite similar. So actually what we're going to need to achieve over the next few years is perfectly achievable, because we can use the same suite of solutions. Language, definitely, but actually we have the technology these days to speak into that, so that's absolutely fine. We can get our resources translated, we can convert webinars into different languages. So actually, yes, language will be one, but that's probably quite a simple one to tackle. In terms of getting that wider recognition of Leafmark as well, that will be really important. I think there's also the question of other similar standards worldwide. And therefore, I know that we're busy within our assurance team looking at the roles of equivalence, or looking at how we can benchmark Leafmark against other standards around the world as well. So those really are the three top kind of barriers, but the enablers, like I mentioned, are all very achievable. And actually, when we have the support of our brilliant retail partners and our brands to make this happen and help us make this happen, doing it together and unifying our resources collectively actually really streamlines the process and makes it a lot easier, and we can accelerate it. So that's from my perspective. Lucy, I don't know if you have anything to add there.
Yeah, so completely agree. And the only other thing I would add is that we have anticipated growth. So we know the dates of when these audits are expected, we know where, we know who, when. So we're able to map how we can deliver that and do lots of forward planning. So we know what the growth is going to be, roughly, you know, to as much detail as we can. So we were able to plan to address these barriers, as Claire has mentioned. We can think about capacity, we can think about delivery format, and we're able to forward plan to overcome any barriers that might arise. But it's really the same focus that we're having now. It is just, you know, simple messages of how you can be Leafmark certified, prioritizing getting that out there in the wider industry. And yeah, we've identified this work and really comfortable with the speed we're progressing.
Great, thank you. And we've just received another question along these lines of the Leafmark logo and labeling. So I'll direct this towards Claire and Lucy. How does the Leafmark logo compare with the new eco style labeling in the UK, such as eco or omni labeling?
Yes, I can take that. So yes, there is the consideration of looking at omni-labeling and making purchase choices more simple. And I actually spoke on this as part of the National Food Strategy conference on Monday, actually. I think that, look, this piece of work is in its infancy. There's still a huge amount of thinking to be done around it. Obviously, it will be great that Leafmark can form part of the labelling system, but actually, when you break it down, it's quite a complex web of data and information, and actually how it will all come to fruition it is still quite unclear at the moment. As I mentioned, a lot of consumers are still not using labeling to make their choices. They're using the more simple approach of their brand of choice or their retailer of choice to make those decisions for them, particularly in that space of sustainability, an overarching measure rather than calories, for example, which is very specific to a product. So I think that there is a role for using omni-labeling. I also think there is a role for logos going forwards. And actually, it's a great deal more about collaborating with brands, retailers, and food producers to ensure that actually we just make the choices for consumers as simple as possible, whether that's through labeling or whether it's through an entirely different mechanism altogether.
Thank you, Claire. We have a question specifically on carbon footprinting, so I'll direct this towards Lucy. It's great to see the uptick in farmers engaging with carbon footprinting tools and renewable energy sources. Do you anticipate a steeper growth in these specific practices? And will carbon footprinting be featured in version 16 of the Leafmark standard?
Really great question. Actually, something we're talking a lot about internally at the moment. So yes, definitely, this is going to be included in version 16. And we're doing that because we understand the importance on farm level, the importance of farmers measuring this and the benefit it can bring. As a standard, our priority is writing requirements that are robust, that they can be audited, that they're accessible to all scales. So the emphasis that we're having and the message we're communicating is that the important thing is having a carbon footprinting measure, something that you can compare year on year to see how your farm is progressing. Because the challenge at the moment is that there's a lot of information, there's a lot of sometimes different tools that offer different things, and therefore the data that you get out of each tool could be different. So it's a rapidly progressing industry. I feel like where we are now compared to 5 years' time might be very different. So the message that we are confident in and people can engage with is doing a measure and then comparing that year on year to identify opportunities for reducing emissions, for carbon sequestration, high risk changes, and that can be used to inform decisions. And then as the standard progresses, as the technology and accessibility and accuracy of these tools progress, we will then be reflecting that in our approach. But this is another example of where we work very closely with the integrated farm management team, who also are looking at carbon footprinting and the guidance and stance that we have in that regard. So we work hand in hand with the Leafmark standard and IFM team guidance to provide advice and a direction that we feel like is accessible to businesses at different stages in their journey to carbon footprinting.
Thank you, Lucy. And another question for you, Lucy, with regards to baseline systems. Have you considered working with Global Gap to deliver a leaf equivalence overseas, similar to what exists with Red Tractor in the UK?
I think we're always looking for opportunities to collaborate, and we're really open to thinking about any opportunity for more efficiency. Any direction that we take needs to be farmer focused. It needs to be delivering against the objectives of Leaf as a charity. If there's someone that's doing something very effectively already, I don't think we would feel the need to duplicate that. If there's a gap in the market and if there's a role that Leafmark could play in supporting that, then we're always open to those conversations. So it goes back to Claire's point that I think collaboration is really important, working with people that expertise and identifying those roles, and I think we're more inclined to look for opportunities to collaborate than to create something new.
Great, thank you, Lucy. With that, we'll wrap up the questions. And so thank you everyone for submitting your questions. And I'll hand it back over to Tom now.
Thank you, Abby. I really appreciate your efficient handling of those great questions, and thank you to all of those who posed the questions and for the wonderful answers that we've elicited. It strikes me that we often use the word journey when we think about our engagement as farmers and supply chain partners with the whole subject of sustainability. And I'm struck by a real sense that the pace is hastening in this journey right now, and furthermore that we're being joined happily by many, many more travellers on that journey. And the questions have brought out, and the presentation brought out, the whole question of international engagement. And I think that it's extraordinarily exciting, the depth of experience that has been built up in the Leaf team through our partnerships with many people over the previous 30 years, that now, enabled and encouraged very much by new digital technologies and means of communication, we are able to offer to more and more partners in the global village that we occupy. Domestic production can be encouraged and supported by Leafmark, and UK consumers can benefit from understanding the provenance of their food that's grown both in the UK and imports that are coming from elsewhere. Those are benefits that can be enjoyed by many, many nations. I look forward to seeing that list of 19 countries that we're engaging in growing considerably over the coming years. It's my happy duty now to thank everybody who's participated. Thank you all for joining this important launch. Thank you to all of our Leafmark farmers and growers. Thank you to our many supply chain partners who've been mentioned and others that haven't, and especially to the Leaf team who've done so much work to pull together this enormously professional looking and important document that records where we are right now in time and gives us a baseline from which to look for future growth. I leave you with a lovely quote which I found yesterday from an English playwright and a journalist from the 19th century, who said, "Earth is here so kind, just tickle her with a hoe and she laughs with a harvest." Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining, and I hope you stay well and enjoy your bank holiday weekends. Thank you.